This is Alex from Vasari Line Plaster and Paint, and I'm going to show you how to apply our Veneziano plaster in the color Sumatra. Our Veneziano is made with lime and very fine powdered marble. It could be applied in a very subtle finish with a little bit of movement and a little bit of sheen to it, and it can also be burnished to a very high polish mirror-like finish. Veneziano is a very versatile plaster. It could be applied on interiors and even exteriors and showers with the right type of sealer to it. So the Veneziano is not made with any aggregates. It doesn't have any sand in it. It's very thin. It's almost like applying sour cream to some extent. So the walls have to be pretty smooth to start with. So you should really have like a level 4 or 5 finish on your drywall, and you're not fighting any texture or any big bumps along the wall, just because it's a very thin application and any imperfection underneath is really going to show through. What you want to do is have a really good primer. In this case, we're using our mineral primer. You can also use any water-based latex primer, a flat one ideally. And you can also go on top of regular latex paint, such as flat or eggshell paint, and it'll adhere to it really well. So the first thing you need is a good trowel like this one. Make sure the edges of your trowel are really nice and clean and there's no nicks or dings in it, because otherwise it'll leave scratches in your finish. And you can use anything from a spatula to a 16 or even 18-inch trowel, just depending on your comfort level, your shoulder strength, your arm reach, and the project. So usually on a project, I would be using a hawk to get the material onto the trowel, but in this case, we're just going to use a spatula like this one. So here we go with our first coat. This is the color Sumatra. And you can see the Veneziano is really nice and creamy, real easy to apply. And again, it's almost like buttering the wall. So here we go. So on the first coat, just remember to put it on kind of on the creamier side. Don't scrape it on. Kind of just butter it on. And when you're doing it, you're just filling up blank spaces. There's no real pattern that you're trying to achieve. You're just covering it. And any little bit of texture that you have on the first coat can show through on the second coat. So when you're applying the first coat, don't worry about any texture that you're leaving, because you can come back in a few minutes and knock it down. And that's what we're going to do in this case. So I'm just going to smooth it out right now. We have a little bit of texture left over. And I'm going to knock some of it down. So that's pretty much it for the first coat. We're going to let this dry. Technically, it takes about 24 hours for it to dry, but as long as it changes color completely, you're ready to go on your second coat. And this is going to dry much lighter when we come back. So stay tuned for the second coat. All right, so our first coat of the Veneziano in the color Sumatra is completely dry. It's changed color quite a bit, by about 75, maybe 80% lighter. It doesn't look like much. Before we start, we really got to make sure that there's no unwanted high points of texture, and to get rid of any imperfect spots, just kind of go over it with the trowel like so. Scrape off anything that might be a little cumbersome for the second coat. And now that we have a pretty smooth coat, we can do our second coat. So here we go. So this is going to be a very soft burnish, and the most important thing with doing the second coat is you don't want to go over it too many times. We want to avoid any high sheen or a lot of variation of color. So when we do this, we're just going to go over it one time very gently and leave it alone. Otherwise, if you go over it multiple times and compress it and burnish it, you're really going to get a high sheen and maybe too much variation of color. But yeah, it's just going to be a very nice, smooth, large-scale finish with nice subtle variation, a little bit of sheen, a little bit of texture. And so here we go with our second coat. Now for the second coat, you don't want too much material on your trowel. Every single trowel stroke is going to make a bit of a difference. It's going to have a memory. So you don't want to overdo it too much in terms of large strokes, unless that's the look you're going for. But in this case, we're just going to put a little bit on like so and start troweling. And as I trowel, there's no particular method or pattern that I'm going for. Just like on the first coat, I'm just covering up blank spots. Now I tend to go a little bit thinner on the second coat, and hopefully, as you can see, as I'm doing it, it's drying up pretty quick behind me. And the first coat's really absorbing the second coat. And even at this point, there's nothing coming off my hand. There's a few sticky spots, but they're drying up pretty fast. And you can even see in areas like this that it really starts to dry up pretty quickly just because it's such a thin application. Now, it's really important if you're troweling in the middle of the wall, don't start your strokes with kind of a hard line like this. Otherwise, this is going to be remembered in the texture. Instead, put a little dollop on like so, and then just trowel it out. And that way you have a very natural start and stop line. Now you can pretty much leave it like this and be done with it. But what I'm going to do, now that it's kind of dry, you can come back and do it again and kind of give it a bit more texture, a bit more variation. You can kind of play around with this as much as you want. But just remember, every time you apply more material onto the wall, just make sure there's no real sticky spots. It's not wet and it's pretty clay. And you can see it's drying very quickly. So I'm going to go over it one more time. And you can lift your trowel a little bit if you want to give it a little bit more texture in places. Yeah, Veneziano is exceptionally easy to use, but just be patient with it. Trust the process. Practice on small scale until you get the look, the feel that you're going for. You don't have to overwork it, but just play around with it and it should be pretty easy. At this point, it's already starting to dry up a little bit. And what I want to do with the trowel, just to give it a little bit of pop when it's dry, I just want to come back over it and just compress it very gently. And I'm really not putting a lot of force into it. And I'm just going to go over it one time like so. And that's pretty much it. When it dries, it's going to dry much lighter. And it's going to give us a little bit of nice mottling, a little bit of color variation, and little pockets of sheen. But should be a beautiful finish. Yeah, we'll come back to this when it's dry and see what it looks like, and I'm sure you're going to love the results. All right, so our second coat of the Veneziano in the Sumatra color is completely dry. Of course, it dried much lighter than when it was wet, and here's the finished result. Has some nice variation, some nice color mottling, a little bit of texture on it, but for the most part, it's just a nice, more or less subtle finish. I could have probably burnished it a little bit less, but has a little bit of sheen running through it. But for the most part is on the matte side. And there it is, lightly burnished Veneziano in the color Sumatra. If you want to check out more videos and more technical information on our Veneziano plaster, check out our website at vasariplaster.com and stay tuned for more videos. Thank you so much.